Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Faith and Finance Newsletter podcast. I'm your host, Nick Garofalo. Thank you for joining me, and it is so good to be with you today. So, today we are talking about financial peace and the purpose of financial peace. So, if Dave Ramsey has helped you get out of debt, start investing, or just to think differently about money, then there probably comes a point, if you've made it through some of the baby steps, that you start asking the question, okay, now what? The debt is gone, or at least moving in the right direction. You have some margin ahead. Perhaps you're already investing. Maybe you're, approaching retirement. The 401k starts to feel more complicated than it used to. The business is doing well now. The kids are getting older. All these things, right? And at some point, a lot of people move from how do I stop the bleeding to how do I steward this well? Dave really helps people stop the bleeding and start to get back on their feet and rehabilitated. And if he does his job well, you'll start having new problems of complexity and financial questions. And so this is really the idea behind Dave Ramsey's SmartVestor program. So Ramsey has spent decades helping people take control of their money through budgeting, through debt payoff, emergency funds, empowering generosity, and just good old common sense financial advice. When someone reaches the point, though, where they need professional investing help, the SmartVestor connects them with financial professionals who share the same commitment to teaching and serving. And so I'm really grateful, really quite honored to share that Open-Handed Wealth has officially been accepted as a Ramsey SmartVestor Pro here in North Georgia. And that really means a lot to me, honestly, because one reason is Ramsey's emphasis on finding advisors with the heart of a teacher. So I've never wanted financial planning to feel mysterious enough that people need me forever. Or maybe better said, it's like I want to educate my clients to the extent they want to learn why I'm doing and how I'm doing the work I'm doing for them. I think that's a really important part of financial stewardship because as owners, right, we own God's stuff for a temporary time. That's why we're called stewards. But I'm ultimately not the steward of my clients' investments. I'm their manager. They're the steward. They're the one who gets to make the decisions and the calls. And so my job is to inform them and help them make a prudent choice, a wise choice, an informed choice, right? So that's what I love to do. But the other reason this feels more personal is because I started listening to Dave Ramsey on AM radio when I was like 9 years old, laying on my bedroom floor. His show is one of the first things that made me interested in personal finance. I just loved the fact that people could call from all across the country with these crazy complicated questions with things I knew nothing about. And what I did understand, even as a kid, was this guy had really simple common sense advice. It was always the same thing, like get out of debt, stop spending so much money, start saving, and you'll be fine. You'll be a millionaire, as he always likes to throw out. It's like, oh, you guys are going to be millionaires. It's like, well, just the simplicity of that was always so accessible to me, even as a kid. And so now, almost 25 years later, I'm 34 this December. So a lot of years later, someone can now go to the Ramsey website looking for financial help, raise their hand and say, hey, I'd like to talk to somebody. And I may actually get to be the person on the other end of that phone call, which is really, really cool. So yes, super cool. Glad to share this. But the longer that I do this work, the more convinced I've become that the goal of good financial planning, management, stewardship, all this stuff, it's not merely to help people accumulate more money, right? The goal is to help people use money more faithfully, more thoughtfully, right? And in one of the SmartVestor trainings, Dave shared this story from Financial Peace University, which was so inspiring. I just had to share it. So I'm going through all this setup really just to share this one story with you guys because it was so amazing to hear the story. So a woman who had been an atheist for her whole life was invited by a neighbor to a Ramsey event. It was the Financial Peace University at a local church. Now, the neighbor, I don't think was a Christian. I don't think she went to that church, but she'd been talking. They'd both been talking to these neighbors about financial stress. The one had found the program and invited the atheist neighbor to go with her. And, so she reluctantly went and she just shared that during one of it's basically like the format of FPU is you go, Financial Peace University, is you go, you watch the video, then you sit around a table and you talk about it and you pretty openly share what's going on in your life. And during one of the group discussions, people began sharing areas where they were really struggling financially. And this woman, she's like, I was not about to share, personal details of my life, but she she slowly opened up to it, and she eventually shared that she was a single mom with 2 kids, and she had taken a part-time job at night just to make her car payment and insurance payments. So the payment, think about this car payment she's making is not just an inconvenience. It's not just a financial decision or a poor financial decision. It was eating her life. It was eating away the time that she could have been spending at home with her kids, helping them with homework, being present with them, just playing card games for crying out loud, just being with her kids. And after she shared, a man at the table reached into his pocket, pulled out his key ring, removed a key, and slid it across the table to her. And he said, "Go home, sell your car, and get rid of the payment. You can have my car. I'll bring you the title next week. It's a 2013 Nissan Altima." That is a very different kind of financial advice. There's no spreadsheet for that. There's no what's called Monte Carlo simulations, which is the whole brainchild behind retirement planning of likelihood of success and all this math stuff. And there's no lecture, there's no ratios. It's just a man with plenty of margin to be able to see a need and meet it, because he had done all of the work, the hard work of building that kind of financial margin into his life. Dave ended the story by saying that the woman was baptized into Christ that weekend. And I don't want to overstate the story or turn generosity into some type of a formula, but oh my gosh, guys, God saves, God draws people to himself. God uses means that we cannot control and usually do not see coming to do extraordinary things. But that act of generosity was part of the gospel in that woman's life. It was part of the story that, when Paul talks about the gospel, he uses the word dunamis, which is spelled like dynamite. It's where we get our word dynamite. It's the power of God unto salvation, is what it says in Romans 1:20. That's through that act of generosity, the dunamis of the power of the gospel was able to explode the logjam of lies and unbelief in this woman's heart. And God did a radical act of salvation. I am not taking anything away from God's amazing radical power of salvation. That is, it's only him, it's all him, of course. At the same time, it is empowered through the generous acts of the church, of his people being faithful to give and to meet needs. And that's what that guy did. And it was a beautiful, beautiful act of generosity. And I think it's really worth paying attention to. And it's one of the reasons that I care so much about financial planning, because the baby steps matter and getting out of debt matters. It does. And building an emergency fund and investing for the future, retirement planning, all this stuff matters. But none of those things are the finish line. They're all the wheels on the car and the components of the engine and all that stuff to drive the car down the road. Once you cross the finish line, that's a different conversation. That's where is that line for you, so you have the margin to just pull out your key ring and slide a key across the table to a woman who's working a second job just to have a car. That's the tools that create that margin are the pieces of the car and the engine and all that, right? Like estate planning and tax planning and insurance and proper investment allocation. And great, let's do that. That's what I do. I love that stuff. That's actually very interesting to me. And those build the car that you can then drive down the road to cross the finish line and say, hey, we have plenty, we have enough. And now that we've built the car that can drive and drive safely, we have enough just to be able to have open hands. Because money's not the point, right? Money is a tool, and it's one of the tools God often uses to reveal what we love, what we fear, and what we're willing to or unwilling to let go of. And this is the kind of work that I want to do with families and with business owners, not just helping people answer the, can I retire, or, how much more money could I make in the market, but helping them to ask better questions. What has God entrusted to me? What needs to be simplified? Where am I carrying risks that I've not dealt with? What would generosity look like if I planned for it on purpose and had a vision of the kind of impact I want to have in the world? What decisions would I make differently if I believed that provision was God's job and stewardship was mine? That's the heart behind open-handed wealth. And now through Ramsey SmartVestor program, I get the opportunity to serve more and more people who've worked really hard to win with money and are ready to figure out what comes next. And I'm so grateful for that. So my hope is that I do it with the heart of a teacher and get to serve a lot of wonderful families. So thanks for listening. I know this is a bit of a different episode this week, but a really powerful story, some exciting business changes, and I just want to share it with you guys. So have a wonderful week. Be blessed. And I'll see you next week.